And we're live. Welcome to the PCS Grades PCS Q&A Coronavirus Edition. I'm your host, MJ Boyce. I'm Director of Communications over at PCS Grades. I have two amazing guests, but before I introduce them, I just need to put this out here. I know so many of you were excited to have Megan Harless, our PCS reform advocate, on with us as she is every week. However, pause for effect. COVID Murphy, i.e. Murphy on steroids, has paid a visit to Megan, and her power is out, and she doesn't have any battery left in her laptop. So if she can, when the power comes back on, she will be joining us in progress. However, I have been charged with giving updates. So we're going to start with the updates before we get to our education experts here. And let's get that started. Big news coming out of the DOD. That would be that the stop move has been extended to June 30. Yep, you heard me, June 30th. Now, I realize that that puts a huge damper on the things that were already dampered on, but here's some more specifics. So it's going to be reviewed every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, they will reevaluate and extend or lift the stop move, specifically because things are changing at such a rapid rate. We already know this. Basically with the stop move, the government funded travel for DoD civilian personnel, service members, dependents, whether that's OCONUS or within CONUS, travel has stopped. However, there are exemptions, as we like to remind you, and there are waivers granted, such as if your service member is mission essential, necessary for humanitarian reasons, or if it's warranted due to extreme hardship. And it's usually executed on a case-by-case basis, so you'll need to follow up with your chain of command. Speaking of which, I say this every webinar, and I'll say it again. There are 2 points of contact throughout this entire mess. The ones that will be the end-all, be-all of the decision-making as it pertains to you, that is your local transportation office, and that is your local chain of command. They are the ones who know you. They are the ones that are handling your stuff. They are the ones that know your specific situation. No matter what happens, whether it's trying to get an exemption or you having questions, you need to go to those 2 sources, your chain of command or your local transportation office. All services are working to put out their own guidance, by the way, as well as in regards to like exemptions and waivers as well. We'll go ahead and make sure that there's links to the stop order and from the SecDef in the comment section below. Once this is over, we'll go ahead and make sure that that's in there. That's one of the first things that we'll do. In addition, the services are also going to be going through and looking at how PCS season is going to look this year, which we all know and are fearful of the fact that, okay, nobody's PCSing or very few people are PCSing. What happens when everybody is allowed to PCS? It's backlog, right? But they're working to prioritize, meaning the services are looking at how they would prioritize shipment if they needed to for hardships. If you have school-age children, which is why you're here today listening to us, if you have school-age children, they're going to prioritize you. They're going to try and bump you up a little bit and take that into consideration if you were due to move during the summer to make sure that they don't miss out or they're already at a disadvantage. So they're going to try and make sure that those with school-age children either stay in place for an additional year, extend your orders, your tour, or move you sooner. That might be a waiver. It all depends. Also, and this isn't really what you would consider a typical update for us, but I just learned that CNN is doing a town hall this weekend for children, and Sesame Street is going to help them host a town hall to explain COVID to children, which I think is just awesome. So just imagine Big Bird on a split screen with like Sanjay Gupta talking about COVID. I just think that is amazing because, our kids, they don't really know what's going on. They don't know why they can't play with their friends. So this is a great way to kind of help educate them too. So if you got nothing to do on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, go ahead and turn on CNN and see what Big Bird has to do. All right. So now, we're going to move on to our topic and our guests. Our topic today is changing schools during the COVID pandemic. And this is a big deal, people. Military kids already historically have a difficult time going from state to state. COVID has just slammed that all into one and made it a little more intricate and difficult for us. There are some questions that are arising that we haven't had to ask before. So our guests today are going to help us answer them to the best of their ability and point us to resources, by the way, that can hook us up. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce first Stacey Ellsberg-Heisman.
Hi.
Would.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Stacey Ellsberg-Heisman, as you are. Nice to see you again, MJ. I will say that it's a thrill to be here, and I have to say this is probably the only time this topic has ever been covered. Is PCSing through a pandemic, I think, is a first for most military families. I am a co-author of a book called Seasons of My Military Student, which I wrote with Amanda Tremilis, who is on with me today. She is also a military spouse like myself. We're both Air Force spouses. Our husbands have served, I think together, Amanda, we said together combined, we have over 55 years of service. I think that was right. And together, but we have at least, how many kids do we have? The other 6 kids. So between the two of us, we have lots of experience. We've been doing this life for a long time. We've been transitioning our kids from school to school. So that's, we have some experience in this, to say the least. We wrote a book, Seasons of My Military Child, together, talking about the seasons of what we think military kids go through when they PCS from school to school. So that's me in a nutshell in terms of my life here as a military spouse.
Awesome. Thank you so much and welcome, Stacey.
Thank you.
My girl. And we have Amanda Tremios. Tremios, yes?
Hi, I'm Amanda Tremios. Calling in right now from Ramstein, Germany, because that's where we're stationed. And so the fun of PCSing in the middle of a pandemic is I'm also PCSing from Oconus back to the States. So that's just a little tidbit fun. But for myself, I'm a national board certified teacher. I've taught 6th through 12th grade English language arts, both on base, off base, for DoDEA, for public school systems. And I have my doctorate in education leadership, and all of my research is on focusing on the professional development of teachers who work with military connected students. So for the past 10 years, I've been working with teachers and with schools on training educators on what does it mean when a student walks into the room and says, you know, I'm part of the military, or we just PCSed in, my parent is deployed. There should be certain things that automatically happen in a teacher's mind of what types of supports these students are going to need. And I train them on what are those trigger comments and what are some of those strategies to help support the student through every season of transition in a PCS, plus any of the storms of geo-bacheloring, separation, transition, and deployments. And so it's great to be here today, and I'm excited to talk about something that none of us ever thought we'd talk about, which is a storm for everyone of COVID-19. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And welcome, welcome, welcome. So we have quite a few questions, and we've heard a lot from our audience as well. Firstly, let me say, if I'm not mistaken, both of you are kind of in this boat yourselves. Am I correct? You're approaching these PCS like
have orders to move. That's correct.
Yes. And so
yeah,
in the middle of this, and that in itself comes with a huge challenge. So you're coming from a place of personal experience as well, in addition to your vast knowledge on this topic. I mean, outside of COVID already. Let's not even start on that already. Thank you so much, Murphy. You're going down, buddy. Like, yes. But we have a lot of people who are in very similar situations or who might be facing them themselves very soon. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on these questions. One of these questions are, so many schools have closed. So many schools have just straight up for the rest of the year. For the most part, it has to do with virtual learning, but, doing a lot of Google Classrooms at home, Blackboard, that kind of thing. And some schools like Oregon, they're done. They're doing a pass fail and the end. Like whatever you've done up to this point, that's it. So with the closing of schools this year, will it make it more difficult for our kids to start school in a new state next year?
Well, I'll start and Amanda will finish because we're pretty good at answering this question. I will tell you that every state is different because education is a state-run business. So, for lack of a better word, it's not federally run. So, what you have curriculum in one state is different to the next state. So, what Washington State decides to do what's best for their students is not what Texas is doing, or is not what Oklahoma or Virginia, or for DODEA for that matter. So, every state and agency like DODEA is handling their curriculum and end of school different. So, what does that mean for us as parents and children? I think the biggest stakeholders are our high school students, without a doubt. And that's where things are going to get really tricky for high schoolers. I think elementary kids outside of those with EFMP and IEPs, like, who really need the special attention and the one-on-one, I think outside of those kids, those are niche kids. Elementary kids are going to be okay because, as Amanda will talk about, they're going to catch you up in the next school year. Half of it's review anyways when you begin in the fall. But I think our high schooler students are probably at the biggest disadvantage because there are credit transfers, there are AP exams, there are college applications, it is literally a road full of potholes for our high school students moving forward, especially if you are transitioning. Rising seniors, my heart is breaking for you. Graduating seniors, my heart is breaking because this is a lot of holes that you're going to find in your curriculum.
You know what? It's interesting you say that specifically with our rising seniors. So recently, there's been, our military kids who are stationed overseas who are, say, taking AP exams.
Yes.
Recently, a story featuring our friend Elizabeth Castro.
Elizabeth Castro, Yep.
Where they're being.
By the way, it's a teacher herself. Yeah, so
right. So she's. I know she's like, what is happening? So these kids, because of the time difference, they all have to take these tests at the same time. But in Japan, that means they're going to be doing that at 5 a.m., 3 a.m., 2 a.m., whatever time frame that their exam is scheduled for. They have to take that test at that time, and we all know that our kids don't perform as well when it's in the middle of the night or they're half tired.
Another disadvantage of being a military connected kid, and what really comes down, and Amanda, you can probably speak to this better for being over there in Germany, but we're trying to level the playing field. We don't want an advantage. We just want the field to be level for us to have the same opportunities, not more, but the same. And that's what Elizabeth and many other parents I know are fighting, and teachers, and they're fighting to be able to help our kids be able to do that. Amanda, what is it like over there in Germany? What time would seniors have to take the test there?
Sure. So the seniors out here will be taking the test late into the evening, but before bedtime at least.
At least,
sure. At least, right. But it's still at an odd time, so it is going to be late into the evening. So I think we are focused, really in depth in Japan, and everyone who's waking up at 2:00 in the morning to take a test. Sure. But I do want to say I am impressed with the College Board and with AP exams that they figured out a way to allow these exams to still go ahead. And I know we're all struggling as military families, but I'm just first grateful that they're still going ahead with the test and finding ways to make it happen. And I know that they heard our concerns, and they think they came up with a CLEP test. They're trying to come up with alternatives. The big thing that I'm interested in this AP portion for our seniors is for when juniors who are taking the AP test is really what I should backtrack to, because when juniors move to a new school, to a new state, that school is going to look at their AP test. And there's several schools, several districts who will only allow weighted grades for AP classes if they passed their AP tests. So some schools say, point blank, you took an AP class, we're going to weight your grade and move forward. They don't care if you took the test. Other schools, other districts say, no, you had to have passed the AP test. Then we will take that passing grade and we will put it into your transcripts and give you a boost in your GPA because you passed the AP test. So that's actually where I'm starting to look at it is I think the colleges are going to work with our students, or they're going to understand COVID-19 and they're going to open things up. Next year, for the juniors who are taking tests this year, they're the ones that I'm concerned about for what will this do to their transcripts, and then what will that do to them moving into college the next year.
And it's funny, I want to say, as you talk about this, I go as a parent that says, okay, how do I arm my kids with what you just said, Amanda? How do I make sure my high schooler, does not get the shaft in all this again? Because let's just be honest, this is our 8th move. So I'm exhausted. He's exhausted. We're all tired. We want this done. So how do I do it? So the best thing I can say is, if as a parent, when you're speaking, I just go, all right, so I need documentation of what my kids have taken, their grades, what courses, how far they got. And then I would actually, for backup, I would actually pull from other states and show examples of how other states and other school districts are handling it in the benefit of the child. And that is not benefit of the school, benefit of the test, benefit of the stakeholder, which is the child. So right. I would actually arm myself as a parent and my child with, when I transfer to a new school as a rising student, as a rising senior or whatever, I would have that kind of in my dossier of, hey, listen, this is what happened, but these are what happened in other states. And there's, like I said, this is new for everybody. Everyone, I cannot imagine administrations, college boards, anyone not given a pass to some of these things. But I will tell you, don't get lazy. Don't just think, of course they know. You need to document every aspect of what has happened to your child through this education experience. Do not take anything for granted. Document, document, document. Bring it with you, hand carry, all that stuff. Do not let your child fall through the cracks of a transition move through COVID-19. Because I will tell you, there are kids who aren't having meals. There are kids who are in a lot worse shape than our military families, at a much bigger disadvantage and a much bigger population than us. Mm-hmm. So I hate to say it like this, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And usually we're pretty damn squeaky because, we've got a lot of stuff going on.
Bam.
But we have to be cognizant and certainly aware that there is a much bigger picture of food insecurity, homelessness, forbearance in homes. There's a bigger issue going out than just military kids having trouble transferring to school. And you have to have that kind of situational awareness before you go in. So arm yourself with knowledge, documents, and know what you're walking yourself into. Don't walk in blindly. You got to do your own research.
Well, and I think if, still on the topic of those AP exams, 2:00 in the morning, 9:00 at night, whatever time they're taking them, I think as educators and as families, we still need to encourage our kids that, it's the way we present this to our students and how they're going to attack these tests. If we are angry, if we are bitter, if we are showing this to our students, then they're going to take that into the test with them. Mm-hmm. But there are free resources to study for the AP exams. Educators are stepping up saying, I don't care about tests anymore. Let's just study for these exams. And let's have our attitude supportive to our students in front of our students. Behind the scenes, when our students aren't looking, fight tooth and nail to make sure that they're getting all of the resources that they need. But when we're talking to our students, at the same time, build them up. Can they pass a test at 2:00 in the morning? Yes, they can. Will they be tired? Sure. Can we be sitting there with a cup of coffee? Why not?
Very true. And I mean, again, I'd like to say, Amanda, you're so right. Applause on them for making this happen, for finding a way to make this happen for all these kids. I think what you said is perfect, because at the end of the day, it's how you present it. And our kids, we project onto our kids and they absorb. So, fake it.
Fake it till you make it. Dude, that's how I cruise through military life. I'm telling you. So I'm going to deviate here for just a second from the questions because you brought something interesting up, advocating for our kids tooth and nail, which we all do, and so that they don't see the ugly per se. However, I would like to say that there's something to be said about teaching our kids that self-advocacy. And I really think things like Elizabeth's son sharing his side of the story and the ins and outs of the, what he's having to do as a military kid, you know what I mean? Like sharing that, giving that perspective is so valuable. We both know that, yeah, you can suggest to Congress all these things you can change, but the stories behind it steal the deal. And if it's coming from our military kids advocating for themselves in a lot of scenarios, that's gold. That's gold. You can't say no to a kid who is speaking articulately about the problem and educating our elected officials. Yeah, I did the head shake all day long. And I think that, I mean, obviously not before test day, but yeah, our kids know that they're a little bit, different. They have a little bit more different challenges, and they're the best ones to speak for it. And I think that it's great that they have that opportunity to be able to self-advocate.
And to be honest with you, that's who we're raising. I mean, we're raising our high schoolers have been around the block a few times. They're not shy. They'll look you in the eye for the most part, unless they're playing Xbox. But besides that, they'll be fine. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the older kids, I love the fact that Elizabeth's son did that. I think that speaks volumes about being a Marine son and living overseas and having that, able to do that yourself.
Kill, simplify. Sorry, Marine Scouts all day.
Go blue, right, Amanda? Go blue.
Absolutely. In the book, we have a chapter on the season of thriving. And MJ, exactly what you just said is all of those students who are in the season of thriving, they're comfortable where they're at. And those are the students who really need to step up, speak out, and say, hey, these are the needs not only of myself, but also of my peers, and I have ideas. And I really reach out to the educators, the policymakers, everyone to listen to our students. And so I have two examples. We had an 8th grade student whose leadership team had to shut down because of COVID-19, and the school said, no more clubs, no more meetings, nothing. And she reached back and asked, can we still do our leadership project? Can we just do a virtual project? And the initial answer was no. And she pushed back again and said, wouldn't it be great if our leaders on campus, our student leaders on campus, could find a way through Facebook or through our school website to encourage our classmates? Can we at least start doing dress-up days and post them? And the school came back and heard the need of the students and went ahead and within 7 days implemented it. And so the students are speaking out, and I think that's great. We had a email come to us from a senior in high school. Her name's Isabel. And she emailed me, as the author. She had just read the book and asked for permission for me to review an email she was sending to her principal. And essentially the email was reminding the principal of the challenges that her military connected classmates are going to face. And she basically implemented I'm a senior, I'm leaving. But everyone else who is coming back to school needs your support. We have students who were supposed to PCS, but because of COVID-19, they're no longer PCSing, and they now need to re-register for their classes because they didn't register for the right classes, because they didn't care, because they were moving. Please reopen the registration process for these students. And she went through each of the different seasons from the book and gave the administration very specific from a student, very specific strategies on how the school can support these students who were leaving but now aren't, who were going to show up in August or September or whenever school starts up again, who had to move last minute, or who knows when we're moving, to be honest. But you're right, these students, because of their experience, are stepping up and stepping out, and I applaud them. And I really hope that administration is listening and hearing our military connected kids, because they have some amazing ideas.
No, absolutely. And I know that there's a lot of fear from many of them, and from many parents. In fact, the next two questions specifically, like, what are the chances of our students falling behind or being held back or losing credits next year because of this? Like, what's the likelihood that this is going to happen and that we're going to be facing this, or to be honest, anybody?
Amanda, I'll let you take that one, the teacher in the group. Go for it.
Sure. So I think first off, that was 3 different questions. It's always posed together as one, but really comes out to being very distinct, different questions.
Okay.
So the first question, will my student be behind? And I think our definition is behind what?
Mhm.
Are they going to be behind showing up to the next grade level than the students who are in that grade level the year before or the year before or the year before? Absolutely, they're going to be behind. Are they going to be behind their classmates? No, they're going to be right at the same place as their classmates because this happened to everyone worldwide. So initially, are they going to be behind? They're not going to be behind. The biggest challenge I see happening is for probably our middle school students and our high school students who have quarter grades.
Mhm.
So not semester grades, not year-long grades, but your quarter grades, because it's very possible that when COVID-19 hit and their school shut down, they never stepped foot into that classroom. So they have no grades as a baseline to earn a pass or fail for that. So for that class, there's going to have to be a way to fix that class.
So do you mean like, so like if my kid was, they had it split up in quarters and they only did 4 classes per day for the first semester and 4 for the second. And, he did math, science, and then 2 electives and hasn't touched language arts, hasn't touched history. Because that hasn't happened yet, there's nothing to go on. There's no credits, man.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Wow. And I noticed that even with my own children, who are going, in middle school, and they have they call it a rotation. And so she had, one class first quarter, a different class second quarter, a different class third quarter, and she never touched fourth quarter. And the school made sure that they started touching base and having assignments for that fourth quarter class to make sure that by the end of the year, they had enough assignments to give her a grade, to give them a grade. But for the schools who have completely shut down and aren't offering anything, that's the class that's going to be a challenge. And my educated assumption is for your seniors, that's normally not a problem because they're just graduating seniors. Let's just graduate them. It's really going to be for those middle schoolers, 9th grade, 10th graders who are moving up. And when it comes to graduation requirements, they will have had enough time to make that class up. Our juniors next year may not have enough time. And I can only hope that schools will recognize what happened and give them a pass on that graduation requirement and allow them to graduate with a hole in their transcript. But schools may turn around and say, no, they need to do summer school, or they need to do a 0 period or an 8th period, and they may need to add on a longer school day in order to get that 1 credit that they
And it's funny that you say that, Amanda, because I'm just going to jump in here because, and that's the thing that, we can say all these things, but I'm moving from Florida to Virginia. Surprisingly enough, Florida has a robust, at least where I'm at Hillsborough County, e-learning program. Like, boom, it was up within the next week. We've been doing it nonstop. Everyone's on, it's not perfect, but we're going. Now, Fairfax County Public Schools, I hear, are having a ginormous problem.
Issues.
So, I mean, who would have thunk? You know what I mean? Like, who would have thought that this would be what's happening? So, my middle schooler is leaving middle school with 4 high school credits. He's an accelerated subject. So he'll be, he's going to be finished with geometry, completed, but I don't think they're going to complete geometry by the end of this year. I don't think they can. And I think if I heard right, like Arlington School District just said, we're done. We're done. And we're going to make it up at the beginning of the year. So it's really, it's not just state by state, it's school district by school district. And it's really, you have to pay attention, one, to know their policies before you move. Kind of pay attention to their page. And this is advice I'm going to throw at every parent right now. Pay attention to the school page that you're going to. Email them. What's your plan for incoming students? What's your plan for geo-batching students? What's your plan for if I can't get there until October because we're on a stop order movement? Tell me how you're going to handle it. And I say this because every place is going to be different. And I can only hope, and if there's an administrator out there listening to this show in any way possible, I hope that they give grace to these kids coming in, because the last thing anybody, teacher, administrator, parent, student needs is hassle coming in and trying to figure out trying to find their sea legs after a move like this. So it's kind of a wait and see for me. I'm not super trusting. I'm just not right now. But I think, like I said, the big issue, Amanda, and I think you touched on it, those middle school, high schoolers, they're the ones who are really going to, it's not going to be equal. Elementary school, I think we can all agree that it's going to be fine. The next grade's going to catch them up. I think that's a fair assumption. Would you agree, Amanda?
I would agree. And I think teachers across the board are saying, when we get you back in September, expect a lot of assessments, expect, several weeks, if not months, of regaining those skills. Skills, we often talk about the summer slide of, the skills students lose over the summertime. Yeah, now we have this COVID-19 slide on top of the summer slide. But teachers are already preparing for that. They aren't sure how much of a slide there's going to be, but they're already preparing for the beginning of next year is going to have to review those skills that students should have learned fourth quarter and need to, be built back up essentially.
And you know what? It could look, I'm just saying really quick, it could look as more as, they start school two weeks early than the school year begins early, or it's going to be e-learning to start the school. Like most colleges I hear are even doing that. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was thinking it's going to look so different in every different school district.
Well, Stacy, what you just said of, e-learning and starting school early is for people who are PCSing, it is vital that we're watching when the school year is going to start, because the school year calendar is already out, but it might be modified. And so I have seen districts talk about that they are going to start school early, or they're going to do a month of remediation in the summertime for students who they already know are going to be in that category, that risk category, that will need to be able to be built up before they'll be successful in the next classroom. Some districts have talked about extending the school day next year, but then we'll start getting into teacher unions and what's contractually binding, and that's a conversation I don't want to get into right now. But it's important that we're watching what is our district doing, because if they move up the school year by 2 weeks, I now need to make sure that I've PCS'd there and I'm in my house that 2 weeks early.
Right. Very true. And it's just like Amanda said, it's we really have to pay attention to those dates as someone who is, I call this a moving target. This is all a moving target for us PCSing. I'm moving. I wasn't going to move. Now I'm moving. I wasn't going to move. Well, now I'm moving. Well, now I'm moving now. Stop movement doesn't apply to us, apparently. And we've been accelerated by 6 weeks. So suddenly I'm like, all right, I got to move. I got to buy a house. Where's the school district I'm going to? Oh God, there's no houses on the market. How am I going to get into a school district when I can't even buy a house? Seriously,
it's like a house of cards, right?
It really is. Yeah.
And one thing, it's like, bam, right?
Yeah.
Like literally, we should just call this webinar House of Cards.
It is.
House of Cards.
Right. So, but in the big picture I would say this to my anxiety-ridden children, which I have because, that's who they are. Small bites. Just get what's in front of you. Whatever's in front of you, take what's in front of you, tackle that. But you can't, Amanda and any parent cannot take on a school district right now during this very fluid way. It really is a matter of, you got to let them figure out their sea legs. And then let's see how we fit into their program. But if you're listening out there, anyone who can make any decisions, please look out for our military kids, because we're carrying a backpack of baggage with us during this COVID-19 crisis and transition. Big time.
Absolutely. And we need grace. We need grace.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move forward, I promise. We have we need to give a couple shout outs here. We have Michelle. Oh. Hey, Michelle. It's good to see you. And then we also have we have Paulette. Hey, Paulette. How you doing, girlfriend?
Hey.
She also says it is absolutely like a house of cards. And we clean up.
How cute is it?
And then actually we have, unfortunately, even though Megan is not allowed to, thanks to her power outage, she can't be on with us on her computer, but she did have a question.
Sure.
So she says, for schools that are continuing curriculum and parents that have felt overwhelmed with what we're being asked to do, she has 3 kids and 7 programs, apps to navigate. What advice can you give when parents feel like falling apart and throwing in the towel with trying to do school at home? And I can guarantee you there are several parents out there
Lots.
who basically want to expel their kids on the daily, which we love them. We love our children. We do. We're good parents. But I mean, come on. We weren't built for this. I can tell you this, out of all of this, I know that we all will have a much more different perspective as far as how our educators are with our kids, because 2 versus 22 is a huge difference.
Right. And it's very tough to take 7 classes online. I know what it's like to take 1 class online, try 7 of them back to back. And for an 11-year-old brain, it's very tough for her to sit for long periods of time and, learn pre-algebra through a recording. It's not natural. So the frustration, I think, is very real for many families. And you add multiple children, multiple classes, put them in high school and middle school, and you're looking at nearly 49 classes with 4 children in the room. I mean, think about that for a minute. That's enough for you to actually, and then if you're trying to work from home, or not having a job, not ensuring where you're going to feed your kids. I mean, that's another part too. So I will say this, and this is just my advice, and Amanda will chime in with something even better, I'm sure of it. Find out what the pass-fail, what the bare minimum to get the heck out of there is, and then literally talk to each teacher on the side and say, I'm having this, this, and this. This is what I'm struggling with. I mean, it's about communication at the end of the day. Now, a teacher cannot change what a pass-fail rate is for the school. I mean, that is a school district and, for some most part, state policy of what it takes to move on. But let's just be honest for a second. Unless it's a high school credit class, high school middle school is supposed to be messy. You're supposed to make mistakes because there's no consequences at the end of the day. You just got to get out of there. So if it's not going to hurt your GPA moving forward, really just take a look at your family and figure out if it's worth it. Because sometimes I guarantee you it's okay to walk away, because there is no harm, no foul at the end of the day. And unless your child has a credit, high school credit that they cannot earn back or will hurt their GPA, everything in my eyes is negotiable with a teacher. Amanda, what do you think?
No, absolutely. It is the partnership between the teacher and the parent and the student. And if the student's old enough, let the student advocate for themselves, because this is a time for them to learn how to do that. As a parent, I always back the student up with a little email on the side of, expect this email from my student. We're really struggling. What they're saying is legit. But I'm coming to you I have 4 kids of my own. And we're in a village in Germany that doesn't have a great internet. And so it was a real challenge. When we first started digital learning, we had everybody on at the exact same time. So my husband's working from home. I'm working from home. Now I have 4 kids who are essentially working from home on a very, very small bandwidth. We're fighting over computers. And if more than 2 people are on at the same time, somebody's getting kicked off. And so I started having to prioritize which of my kids today needs the bandwidth, which needs the computer that isn't going to break down, which kid is going to be the one who's plugged into the wall versus plugged into Wi-Fi that might cut out. And usually my oldest was the one who won that out because she's working on credits. But I also have a student who's on an IEP, and I needed to make sure that child was having access. If they missed their opportunity with their teacher, I made sure that they didn't miss the opportunity with their IEP teacher, so that way they had that added support. In the beginning, it was almost daily conversation with the teachers, and I'm sure they didn't appreciate it, but they heard it, and they worked with it, and they worked with me, and they worked with my kids. And as the days went on, it got easier. But when you're looking for advice, what do we need to do when we throw in the towel? Every Monday, I have 2 kids crying. Every Thursday, I have 2 kids crying. Not always the same kids. Monday, when they see their assignments for the week, and it's, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And they're overwhelmed.
Babies.
Thursday, I have at least 2 kids meltdown crying. At the end of the day, when they realize they only have one more day to get all of these assignments done.
Oh my God.
And we've been blessed so far that the weather's been beautiful. And so when school's over at 3 o'clock, I might let them stay on for an extra 15 minutes, but I say, turn it off. I will send your teachers an email saying you've accomplished what you can accomplish for today.
Mhm.
This is a good set of assignments, but while we're still learning to navigate these programs, it's going to take us longer to do it. Please show them grace and not give them a 0. And every single time so far, the teacher has been understanding. The one day we lost internet completely, all 4 kids broke down in tears. I jumped in my car and I drove up to the next village where there's a cell phone tower. I emailed all 3 of the schools, all 7, 8, 9, 10, all like 17 teachers
Yikes.
individually, saying, we've lost internet for the day. There's nothing we can do. I'm sitting on the side of the road to send you this email. I probably went to an extreme to get that email out, but that's what it took to calm my kids. When I got back, I pulled out the bikes. We went for a 3-hour bike ride and enjoyed our beautiful day. And we happened to live in a district who reached out, and by the end of the school day, one of the teachers sent a note to IT, who sent a note to the principal. I don't know how many emails went through, but I had an email by the end of the day saying, we have a hot spot for you. If we expect your kids to be on internet all of this time, we have a hot spot for you. You can come tomorrow before 3 o'clock and pick it up. And we haven't had an internet issue since, but it's the communication with the schools, them showing us grace and us showing them grace when we're frustrated.
And it's funny you say that, because I don't, sometimes when these administrators and educators and those who have come up with a great system may not have thought of every single situation or scenario. They're doing the best they can. They don't know what the hell they're doing either. This isn't what they wanted. And I will say, like where I live in Hillsborough County, we're used to hurricanes knocking full cities off the grid. So we had an e-learning like right off the bat because we're used to being kicked to the curb. So I think, but no teacher's ever done it here. We went right into it. So I think it's safe to say that I love the way that Dodea handled that at Ramstein. I love that because to me that was a big deal. That was a way of showing like I see you, I connect with you. Here in Hillsborough County, they've done very similar stuff. But I will say mostly the bar for graduate, or the bar for what needs to be turned in has been dropped significantly. Like it's not what it was. Course rigor is not what it was. It is, we're keeping you engaged. We're keeping you going. The last quarter was just going to be review. We're not going to do a whole bunch of new material. We're going to save that for the next year. So I think circling back to the question is give yourself some grace. But as Amanda and I just said, if you don't talk to the teachers, they don't know. And if you don't explain, it's not just one kid, it's 4 kids, or it's 3 kids, or I've got this, or it's bandwidth. They don't know. They're not. This is new for everybody. So explain it.
You know what? And it's interesting that you bring up the whole, the OCONUS virtual stuff. So we have Ashley here who says, Dodea did a great job with virtual school OCONUS though there was a learning curve. I hope that the new middle school and high school that her children are going to, gives newcomers grace to learn their virtual program when they PCS back to CONUS. And that brings me to my next question, because I literally, Sheila Rupp sent this in ahead of time. She says, since not all districts are handling distance learning the same, or even I guess CONUS, OCONUS, Dodea to public schools, since they're not all handling the distance learning the same, everybody has a different stopping point. Some are doing new material. What kind of continuity can they expect for those that are moving? What kind of accommodations can be made to make sure that the kids don't lose ground while over the summer, PCSing? Are they going to be in a perpetual state of catch up due to the differences in the virtual learning?
Well, I'll go back to Amanda and I are really good at this because this is what we advocate all the time. We believe in creating every child needs an education binder. And it's a personal education binder that grows with the student from K until college. It is a binder that you keep a continuity of their school records, what they've learned, what they left off on, to the next school, and you hand carry it. So I've said this, I'm a journalist by trade. That's what I do for a living. That's my career. That's my education. And I've written about this multiple times, but I can't, it's something I hope it becomes a no-brainer for every military family out there for the rest of time, which is one little official transcript is a piece of paper, one white piece of paper that might have this year's grades on it and maybe a reading level, maybe. That's it. That's all the continuity you're getting in an official transcript. That's it. So when you hand carry your records, which you're allowed to do because of that's what we have done through MIC3, I say go big or go home, and create an education binder that stores everything from the last three years of grades, not 1 year, 3 years of grades, because it shows continuity between, did you do okay in English? Was it a bad time? Was your husband deployed, or was your mom deployed at the time? This was a homecoming. Oh yeah, we didn't go to school. Yeah, we had some absences, but you can circle on there and say, yeah, I took my kid out for 4 weeks for integration. It's a way for a counselor to look at the whole picture of the student. So 3 years of report cards, at least, your shot records, your sports physicals, your work samples from a kid. So what your kid is working on. I say that my son's doing geometry, my daughter's doing pre-algebra. The last 5 or 6 weeks, I'm pulling everything out of what they've done, I'm printing it, and I'm putting it in there. So when I go to register at the next school, I could say, this is what he left off on. This is the material he was using. This is the book he was using, because I took a picture of the book, or in this case, I have it on, I know Pearson's book is what they're both using. I can use that. So the point in all this is really take a snapshot of everything your kids are doing, put it in a binder, and hand carry it with you to the next place. And that creates what Amanda and I like to call the teacher's lounge, because military kids don't get to the teacher's lounges. We're not, we don't have any knowledge of anybody with us. So in our location, this education binder becomes a teacher's lounge. And last but not least, and I'll throw it over to the teacher in a minute, but we like this idea of creating a teacher-to-teacher letter. So especially for elementary school kids, that's always a good one, because you've got the one teacher, or at least a team of teachers. Middle school, I like to use the core teachers, or that one teacher that really makes a difference. In high school, it's always the extracurriculars, the higher level classes where the teachers are taught. Ask the teacher to write a letter to their future teacher about what kind of student they are, what kind of peer they are, what kind of learning style they might have, and do it before the end of school. Don't rush this teacher to the very end. This is a great way for a teacher to talk to another teacher in teacher speak and be able to describe that child. And it grows with the child. It turns into letters of recommendation for clubs when you go to a new school and they need that teacher recommendation, but no one knows you. Well, you can pull this out and says, my civics teacher thought I was thebomb.com, and I think it's a great idea for me to do this. So this is something that Amanda and I advocate on every single move. Do this for your kids. Mm-hmm. Amanda, what do you think?
Sure. Well, I would say this year especially, and I think, MJ, the bigger question might be there is, you have people PCSing two different directions. You have us, who we have a very robust learning system, but I'm not sure where we're going to, how robust their system is. So it could be that next year my kids already learned all of this, and I need to show the school grace because my kids are going to be going through a review. I think the harder challenge might be, so they might be bored in class. I'll put it that way. Let them be bored. The curriculum will catch up to them. So they might be bored the first couple of weeks, but the curriculum's going to catch up to them. I think the stronger question is, well, what about the students who aren't receiving any digital learning, aren't receiving any supports right now, going to a school who has continued a robust learning program? And I'm sure they're concerned that are their students going to be behind? And so it's really taking a moment and even reaching out if you still have access to your teacher, because I'm not going to make the assumption that everybody does. But if you still have access to your teacher, even if it's via email, ask the teacher of what skills will my child still need in order to be updated and caught up to move to this new place. We're going to assume that everybody's moving to the next grade level. My 4th grader's moving up to 5th grade. My 7th grader's moving up to 8th grade. And so what skills, teacher, is my child missing that we can work on over the summer or over COVID-19 or through this PCS, even at home, and have them work those skills? It's not going to be the real best learning environment, but if they say, hey, your child's still pretty weak in multiplication, then let's not let become more weak in multiplication, or whatever that skill happens to be, because oftentimes it's that skill base that if they have the skill, they have the reading skill, the math skill, the writing skill, if they have the skills, we can get them caught up pretty easily in everything else. So let's make sure we know where those skill levels are. The other thing I'm going to suggest is, Stacy's talking about going to the school, picking up our transcripts, having all of that. MIC3, the Interstate Compact, gives us permission and makes it legal for us to hand carry our records. But I don't want to make the assumption that everybody listening has access to their school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if they don't have access,
right.
Like if it's closed, like, how do we get their stuff?
Right. If it's closed, it's closed. We can't do anything about it. We're going to still PCS and move forward. And that's where the education binder becomes critical. Those teacher to teacher letters, all of that, because eventually the school will open back up and they can forward those records over. But if the school's closed, MIC3, the Interstate Compact, nothing's going to override a state lockdown. If the school has been locked up, the school's locked up. And so we're going to PCS without it. We're going to PCS with the resources that we have and move forward. If the school's open, let's call the school and ask them to give us a print off copy so we can bring it with us. But we're not going to assume, I'm not going to assume that everybody here has that.
No.
Gotcha.
And I think so you need to look at what you have at home. What have you had? Go back through your emails, look back through your stuff. I mean, I have to bring Eric's, my son's SAT scores because I'm not sure they'll be forwarded. I have no idea. I really have no clue. I don't know what's going to happen. So I need to make sure that I get my kids as whole as possible, each of them having their own binder and moving to the school and knowing that this is the teacher's lounge that we've been looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ashley has a great question. She wants to know how to transfer from an individual math class format into an integrated math format. Like, she's heading to San Diego. So, like, do you know how that might affect placement? Or is that, so here's the thing. Let me interrupt for a second. Let me just go ahead and throw this out there. And Ashley, let me tell you, I got your back. In these webinars, I forgot to mention this, and I can't believe I did, but we operate under 3 mass information tools here. We are here to provide you the answers. And if we don't know the answers, we're going to point you to those who do. And if we can't do either of those things, we will take that question for action and we will get back with you. As I'm thinking that this might be one of those questions that we take for action.
I think we might need to take that one for action. And that might be one even to step up and ask the school liaison officers, both on this side and on that side, because my guess is people coming into San Diego have had that question before. And the school liaison officer specific to that area probably has a better answer than me, who's not an administrator, who doesn't do the registration process. So anything I come up with, I wouldn't trust 100%.
Right.
So,
and it's very school specific. I mean, that's what you're looking at. It's going to be their policy.
Mm-hmm. But my guess is the outgoings, the school liaison officer in your current area can connect to the school liaison officer in the new location. Those two will talk often. And then you can work out, with that specific question with the SLO, or the SLO can reach out to the district and ask that question for you and get a legitimate answer that's true to your situation.
Right. I'm going to say this because my son is I go back to my son. He's a high school credit class. Here in Florida, you have to take an end of course exam in order to have a passing grade or have it passed to be able to go on to what's next for him. It's algebra 2, right? He's taking geometry, so it's algebra 2. They've canceled all that. There's not required anymore. So am I going to have trouble going to Virginia and he didn't get an EOC because he wasn't able to have one. Are they still going to accept him? Those are kind of the things I think about, that in any normal circumstances, Virginia would be like, no, I'm sorry, you need to go ahead and do this. But I think that with this time, there's so much, everyone's in the same boat. Nobody's giving end of course exams at this time. Nobody's, transferring really efficiently. It's kind of like, sure, come on, we'll make it happen. That's my feel right now. Catch me in September and we'll see if I still feel this way.
I think we might have to have a 2.0 on this one.
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, Stacey, you're coming to Virginia. That's my neck of the woods. So,
yay!
Over.
I'm going back to Virginia, I should say. I'm coming back home is the way I'm going to look at it.
Oh, yay! Well, I will throw you a virtual welcome home party.
Thank you.
So, okay, so before we go, this has been fantastic, and I think that there's so much that we could discuss. I think I might end up having you both back on at some point, because this is our future. These are our military kids. These are the people. These are the resilient ones. Let me tell you, I have to take notes from my kids sometimes on how to maintain resiliency. And I hate that word, by the way. I really just hate the word resiliency. I hate it, but I need it in my life, and my kids possess way more than I do. For somebody who joined military life as a spouse, and change being the constant in our lives, I'm not a fan of change. So this military life is just like a crash course, if you know what. But I know that you guys have some tips for us. I know you have resources, because as a research guru, information is the only thing a lot of times that makes me feel better about the crappy situations that we're in. So what I would love from each of you, is to give us those tips on changing schools during the pandemic, whether that be Oconus to Conus, whether that be from Conus to Dodia, or vice versa. Whatever you can give us the juice.
I think Stacey really covered a lot of it when she talked about building the education binder, working with the teacher and building teacher-to-teacher letters, and then making sure that we are hand carrying as much of the records as we can. The tip on that one is, to answer Stacey's question of, what about these end of year exams? Make sure that in the transcripts, make sure that in the student records, it shows that the student met all of the requirements to earn credit and move on to the next year, even if they have to write in recommended for next year, X class. And so that way your student can still continue to move forward.
So as Amanda said, one of the things that we talk about in our book is we really go over the seasons of what we feel a military child does. And we are in the season of leaving right now, but we're going to be in the season of arriving sooner rather than later. And in our book, we also give a lot of tips that just don't change, even though there's a virus on every doorknob. Our tips don't change, which is make sure that you have a parent-teacher conference almost as soon as you arrive. Don't wait till 6 or 7 weeks after the time. As soon as you get there and you get a teacher, get FaceTime. Make sure the teachers understand, or the counselor understands, what you've been through. And again, there are other families out there who have it really bad right now, and we need to be able to have patience with the incoming school district, because they don't know all the answers. But it doesn't mean you have to shut up either. Just have patience and be articulate. Know before you go, which is something I always like to say. With MIC3, know what it covers and what it does not. I think one really quick here is that extracurricular activities such as sports, high school sports in particular, there are some. This has been an unfair year for our kids. End of story. Just been unfair. And we can talk about it, we can cry about it, however we want to look at it. But there are some things that MIC3 covers, which is they get a chance to try out. Damn it. They can try out. You are not having this team without my kid trying out, period. Doesn't mean they have to make the team, but it does mean that they get a shot, and you're going to give them a shot. And so, but it doesn't mean that the school district has to give your child any special treatment outside of that. So know before you go. Know what the compact covers and what it doesn't. And if you have any questions, of course, our book is always available. It covers all of that and more, to be honest with you. Or you can always ask Amanda and I. We have a great Facebook group that has nearly 2,000 parents and educators in it, and we would love for you to join. Ask away.
And that is, what is the name of the group?
It's Seasons of My Military Student, Parent, and Teacher Group K through 12. It's a mouthful. Sorry.
You know what? No, we're gonna drop the link in the comments section so people know how to get there. Also, can one of you hold up the book that you both the Seasons?
Sure. Go for it, Amanda.
Let's get a close up of that baby.
Yay.
Of my military student. That, let me tell you all, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I wrote an article about this book. I reviewed this book, and let me tell you, I wish I had this book many, many moons ago. Not that I'm, a day over. Yeah. So I do. I wish I had this book. It's so helpful. I kept thinking I could have used this then, and I could have used this then, and I could have used this then, but I can use this now. And
Amanda and I wrote the book because we needed the book.
And isn't that the way it should
look
be?
at it.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you ladies so very much. You have given us we're going to have a 2.0. You guys know that, right? Like that's happening. I'll make sure that it's not during your, PCS hell, but we do have to have you back on. In fact, we're probably going to be going more into, the educational realm as well. In addition to you, I think in the future, especially for our EFMP families, looking into having our buddy Michelle and some of her friends over at Partners in Promise to talk about the challenges and delve a little bit deeper into how our special needs families and kids are doing not just with COVID, but specifically in COVID, and kind of maybe how to advocate for them. And I'm really just kind of excited because not only is it Month of the Military Child, this is so appropriate, but we're nearing the end of the school year. So all of this that you just gave us today is so valuable. And to our audience, if you have any questions for either Stacy, Amanda, or both, we will be forwarding them over. Make sure that you check out their group because I'm a part of it too, FYI, and it's fantastical. And thank you, ladies, so much again. And we hope to see everyone next week for our PCS Q&A Coronavirus Edition. Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.